Dim the lights, grab a snack, and try to relax. But don't say I didn't warn you. The Walmart pump. Scary night shift. Me first night on the graveyard shift at the 24-hour Walmart started with two things, flickering lights and the smell of burnt rubber. I was assigned to monitor the outdoor fuel pumps from midnight to 6 a.m., a job so simple they didn't even bother training me. No one uses the pumps at night, the manager, Greg, had said. Just stay awake and press the reset button if they glitch. That's all. But Greg hadn't mentioned the mannequin. It stood just past pump number 7, limp, human-sized, clothed in a tattered Walmart vest with a faded name tag, Brady. No face. No stand. Just standing there, staring at the convenience store window through a smear of frost. Decorative prank, Greg had chuckled during orientation. Corporate made us put it up after the 2017 incident. He didn't explain further. Midnight came fast. The store emptied. The indoor lights dimmed. And I took my place in the tiny kiosk outside, where I could barely see pumps 6 through 8 through the cracked, fogged-up glass. At 12:41 a.m., pump number 7 beeped. No one was there. The mannequin, however, had moved that I froze. The mannequin had been at the far end of the lot when I started. Now it stood directly beside pump number 7. Closer to the booth. Closer to me. I rubbed my eyes, sure I was sleep-deprived. Blamed the flickering overhead lights. But no. Its angle had changed. Before, it faced the street. Now it faced me. Another beep. Pump number 7 flashed, please insert card. But still, no one was there. I hesitated, then stepped out into the cold. The wind cut like knives. I trudged toward the pump, eyes locked on the mannequin. It didn't move. Up close, it looked worse. Cracked plastic. Stained shirt. And the name tag, Brady, was newer than I expected. The plastic still glossy, like it had been issued recently. I reached for the pump screen to reset it. That's when the speaker on the unit buzzed to life. It spoke. Why'd you come back, Brady? I jumped. My name wasn't Brady. I turned to look behind me, empty lot. Back to the pump. The mannequin was gone. Only the vest remained, folded neatly on the pavement. A faint trail of wet footprints led behind pump number 8 and vanished into the shadows. The pump screen changed again. Shift never ends. I backed away, heart pounding, skin numb from more than cold. Inside the kiosk, the phone was ringing. Only one word flashed on its cracked display. Run. I didn't answer the phone. I couldn't. It kept ringing. The same shrill tone every 3 seconds, like a metronome designed for dread. And that one word kept flashing on the kiosk's busted screen, run. Over and over, glitching slightly, sometimes turning to RUM or R9N, but always returning. I picked up the receiver anyway. Hello? I whispered. Nothing at first, just the soft hum of static. Then something deeper. Breathing. Wet, ragged breathing. Like something choking on its own lungs. A voice crackled through finally, distorted and distant. You took the shift. You agreed. Now don't look at it. Don't see it. Click. Silence. The phone went dead. I stared at it, heart pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I started to back away, but then. Clink. The sound of something metallic hitting concrete. I looked out the kiosk window. Pump number 7's handle had unhooked itself. It swung in slow arcs, dripping black liquid. Not fuel. Something thicker. Something that steamed when it hit the ground. A low whine came from the intercom again. I pressed the reset button. Nothing changed. Instead, the screen read. Shift covered. Employee, Brady Tolliver. Status, deceased. The lights above flickered again, then died. Only the security floodlight stayed on, casting one perfect circle of light. And in that light, was him. The mannequin. Wearing the vest again. This time, it had a face. And it was mine. I stumbled back, knocking over the chair in the kiosk. The mannequin stood motionless beneath the floodlight, its arms slightly raised, like it had just finished mimicking a wave. But what froze my spine wasn't the pose. It was the face. My face. Down to the bags under the eyes. The scar above my brow. Even the tiny cut on my lip from nervously biting it earlier that shift, it had that too. I blinked. So did it. My knees went weak. The light above it buzzed, flickered, then surged brighter, turning everything around it to shadow. Like the darkness itself bowed to the thing wearing me. And then it moved. Jerky, like an old stop-motion figure, arms lowering, head tilting to the side with a sickening crack. One step. Another. Closer to the kiosk. No sound. No footsteps. It just slid closer. I slammed the kiosk door shut, turned the bolt. The mannequin stopped just outside, inches from the glass. Its hand raised slowly. Then it did something worse than knock. It mimed. It pointed at me. Then dragged its finger across its throat. I gasped, reaching for the emergency radio. Static. Nothing but static. And beneath that, breathing. Then a whisper. You're clocked in, Brady. You don't leave. The lights in the kiosk popped, glass raining down. I ducked, and when I looked up, it was gone again. And the only thing on the kiosk floor was a Walmart name badge. Freshly printed. Still warm. It read. Brady Tolliver. Night shift manager. I stared at the badge. My breath fogged in the air. It felt colder inside the kiosk now, unnaturally cold, like the temperature dropped with something's arrival. Not weather. Something else. The name tag looked brand new, but I knew that name. Everyone who works night shift long enough hears about Brady Tolliver. He was a legend, or a warning. Supposedly disappeared mid-shift 5 years ago. No cameras caught it. No signs of struggle. Just, gone. Except now I had his badge in my hand. And I was being called by his name. The kiosk lights wouldn't turn back on. My phone was dead. Even my watch had stopped ticking at 1:13 a.m. I made a choice. I left the kiosk. Bad idea. The parking lot felt deeper than before, like the space had stretched. The pumps were farther apart. The lights buzzed above, but one by one, they began going out behind me. Every step I took toward the store, another light died. Then I saw the door. It was open. Just a crack. I slipped inside. Silence. Walmart at night is eerie on its own. But this was worse. The aisles stretched too long. The shelves were wrong, stocked with things I didn't recognize. Tins with no labels. Toys with eyes scratched off. Soap that smelled like dirt and copper. And every so often, I'd hear wheels. A shopping cart, moving on its own. A slow, rattling squeak from the far end of the store. I turned a corner, aisle 99. There is no aisle 99. But there it was. And someone stood at the far end. Tall. Limp. Back turned. Wearing a blue vest. It was him. Brady. Or, whatever's left of him. He turned his head toward me. Too far. Too fast. And he smiled. Brady's smile didn't belong on a human face. Too wide. Too many teeth. His eyes were like two ink puddles, flat, reflective, bottomless. He didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Just stood at the end of aisle 99, arms limp at his sides, vest flickering like a hologram caught in a feedback loop. I couldn't run. The floor under my shoes had changed. It wasn't linoleum anymore. It felt soft. Like skin. I looked down, and the floor was pulsing. Veins. There were veins running between the shelves, throbbing with each beat of my terrified heart. I looked up again. Brady was gone. The aisle lights dimmed. The store's PA system crackled to life, a sweet, robotic voice chirping over soft jazz. Rollback special tonight. Buy one soul, get one free. Then came a scream. Not from me. From somewhere in the next aisle. I ran toward it, heart hammering, lungs burning. I turned the corner and froze. There was another employee there, a girl I'd never seen before, curled in a fetal position near the frozen section. Her name tag read, Mira. She was crying. Covered in scratches. Her fingernails were torn like she'd been clawing at the shelves. When she saw me, she whispered, "You're new, aren't you?" I nodded. "You shouldn't talk to the mannequins," she said. "They remember too much." Then she looked up, and gasped. "Behind you." I turned. Brady wasn't there. But his vest was. Floating in the air, arms outstretched like a crucifix. And it was smiling. The vest was smiling, the vest hovered, motionless, grinning in a way that cloth shouldn't. Its mouth was stitched into the chest, a long seam pulling itself wide open, revealing rows of zipper teeth lined with something wet, alive. Mira screamed and scrambled backward into a shelf of canned peaches, sending them tumbling like shrapnel across the floor. I grabbed her arm and pulled. We ran. Down past aisle 72, past clearance, past a cooler that buzzed with the sound of whispering voices. The store had changed again, aisles curved impossibly, looping back in on themselves. Floor tiles flickered between concrete and something else, bone white, with tiny cracks spidering outward as if something was underneath, trying to get out. We ducked into the break room. The light buzzed above, sickly yellow and trembling. Mira collapsed onto a plastic chair and shook. "They think this store's real," she said through chattering teeth. "But it isn't. Not after midnight." "What are they?" I asked. She looked up, eyes wide, pupils huge. "Returns," she whispered. "Returns. People who quit. People who died. People who tried to clock out. The store keeps them. You don't leave unless you're replaced." A sudden banging on the door. Once. Twice. 3 times in perfect rhythm. We both jumped. Then. "Manager to the break room, please. Manager to the break room." The intercom voice was mine. I looked toward the door. A shadow grew underneath it. Thin legs. Arms too long. A twisted body wearing a familiar vest. Then, slowly, something slid under the door. A Walmart orientation packet. Fresh. Smiling. Welcome to night shift. That I didn't touch the packet. It just sat there, oozing something dark from its edges, ink or blood, or both. The smiley face on the cover had changed. Its grin stretched too wide, and its eyes had turned completely black. Mira whispered, "Don't sign it. That's how it gets in." What gets in? She looked at the door like she expected it to vanish. The real manager. The one under the floor. The lights flickered again. The air thickened, humid and stale, like breathing inside someone's mouth. A low hum started vibrating through the walls. From the hallway came dragging footsteps. Not fast. Not heavy. Just, tired. Mira grabbed a fork from the break room table and held it like a weapon. They always send the new hire a test. It's part of orientation. I backed up. What kind of test? She stared at me. Would you kill your old self to stay alive? Then the door creaked open. Standing there wasn't Brady. It was me. Exactly me. Same hoodie. Same Walmart badge. Except my doppelganger's head tilted too far left. His smile was trembling, forced. And he had no eyes, just two hollow holes leaking fog. He raised a clipboard and said in a cheerful tone. "Performance review, Brady." Mira screamed. I grabbed the packet from the floor and flung it at the doppelganger. It hissed and lit up like acid had splashed it. The thing shuddered, glitched, then slammed the door shut with enough force to crack the frame. Silence. Mira collapsed to her knees. "It's learning you," she said. "Every time you flinch, every time you panic, it remembers." I looked around. The break room clock had stopped at 3 a.m. And beneath the floor, I heard knocking. Something was waking up. The knocking beneath the break room floor was slow, rhythmic, like it had a pattern. A code. Mira backed against the vending machine, her fork still clenched in her shaking hand. "That's the manager," she whispered. "The real one. He only wakes when there's a replacement." My throat tightened. Replacement for who? She didn't answer. The walls began to breathe. No exaggeration. The drywall pulsed inward, then out, like lungs. The floor tiles below my feet started to shift and sag, softening, turning spongy. I stepped back. Too late. The tile cracked beneath me with a loud snap, and my leg plunged through, into darkness. It wasn't just empty space. It felt like flesh. Warm, wet, pulsing flesh. I yanked my leg out and backed away, gasping, now coated in something slick that burned my skin. Mira grabbed my arm. "We have to go. He's coming up. If he gets out, we become part of the store. Forever." We burst out of the break room and into the store. Aisles had twisted again, shelves bending like ribs, flickering lights forming a tunnel of fluorescent decay. Overhead, the intercom repeated in a sugary tone. "Clean up in aisle 5. Clean up in aisle 5. But we weren't near aisle 5. Until we blinked, and suddenly, we were. Blood. Buckets of it. Soaking the floor. A body lay there, another version of me. Face down. Hands still clutched around a receipt. Mira stepped closer. "It's a loop," she muttered. "Each shift, the store resets. New worker. New corpse. Always someone named Brady. I turned to her slowly. Then what was your name before? She didn't look at me. Just whispered, it used to be Mira. My heart dropped. She turned. Her name tag now said, Brady Tolliver. I staggered back from her, him, whatever stood wearing Myra's shape. The moment I blinked, it wasn't Mira anymore. The body had stretched. Its arms were longer. Skin too pale. Her eyes gone flat and black, like they'd been painted on. The tag read Brady Tolliver, but the thing smirked with Myra's mouth and said in her voice. We all take our turn. My pulse thundered. My legs itched to run, but the floor beneath me moved, rolled like conveyor belts, herding me toward the returns counter at the front of the store. And above me, the intercom chirped. Unwanted purchase detected. Initiating return protocol. A loud clang echoed across the ceiling. Cages began to drop from above, huge steel grates slamming down at the end of each aisle. I was being funneled. I ran, heart pounding, gasping, slipping on the blood-soaked tiles of aisle 5. I could hear footsteps now. My own. But behind me. Someone, or something, was copying my every move, one step behind. I turned a corner. And crashed into a mirror. No. Not a mirror. Another Brady. But this one looked like I'd been rotting for weeks. Skin sagging. One eye missing. Mouth stitched in a smile, even as the jaw twitched in agony. He raised one hand and whispered. Clock out. Then he lunged. I fell backward, grabbing the nearest thing from a shelf, an umbrella. I jammed it through his chest, heard a wet crunch, and he collapsed, leaking ink instead of blood. The intercom crackled one last time. Congratulations, Brady. You're now permanent staff. Every light in the store died. And then I saw the real manager. Crawling out from beneath aisle 5. Too many limbs. Too many faces. The fluorescent lights flickered again, a dull, intermittent buzz filling the air like a warning whispered just out of reach. I stared at the checkout lanes, now deserted except for the occasional creak of a loose shelf or the faint hum of the security cameras. The pump outside was still running. The cold night air carrying its mechanical drone into the building like a heartbeat from somewhere deep beneath the ground. I told myself it was just fatigue. The endless hours, the strange silence, the way the shadows seemed to lean closer in the aisles after midnight. But something wasn't right. Not since I saw that figure outside, something crouching, watching, waiting. I grabbed my flashlight and headed for the back door. I had to see if the pump was still there, if the light was still on. I had to know what was lurking beyond the parking lot. The cold hit me like a slap when I opened the door. The night was thick with fog, swirling low over the cracked asphalt. The pump screen blinked erratically, numbers flashing without logic. And standing beside it, there, unmistakable in the dim light, was the figure. Tall, impossibly thin, with eyes that glowed faintly red, staring straight at me. I froze. It didn't move. It just watched, and somehow, I knew it wasn't human. Behind me, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The slam of the door echoed through the parking lot, muffled but final. I whipped around, my breath freezing in the cold air as I fumbled with the handle. It was locked tight. Panic bubbled under my skin, every nerve screaming to run, but my feet stayed rooted. The figure at the pump didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head slightly, like it was curious, or amused. I scanned the fog for any sign of movement, but the parking lot was empty except for that ominous shape and the relentless hum of the pump. Suddenly, a low, guttural sound filled the air, like a growl mixed with static, as if the pump itself was speaking in some ancient language I couldn't understand. That I tried my phone, but there was no signal. No calls, no texts, no hope. The store was sealed off, the night swallowing me whole. The figure stepped forward slowly, its shadow stretching long and thin across the cracked pavement. I forced myself to step back, heart pounding so loud. I thought it would burst. Then, with a swift, unnatural movement, it lunged, not at me, but at the pump itself. Its hand, impossibly long and skeletal, reached out and touched the glowing screen. The numbers on the pump blinked wildly, then all went dark. The silence that followed was suffocating. And then the pump roared to life again, louder, faster, as if it had been unleashed. The roar of the pump shattered the stillness, the air vibrating with a deep, mechanical growl that seemed almost alive. I stumbled backward, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps as the figure remained still, watching the machine pulse and throb like a heart gone mad. Then, without warning, the glow from the pump screen exploded into a blinding light that stabbed at my eyes. I shielded my face, feeling a heat unlike any normal machine should emit, washing over me like fire. When I dared to look again, the figure was gone. Only the pump remained, silent now, its screen blank except for a single line of text scrolling slowly across. You cannot leave. The night demands its due. A cold chill ran down my spine. The parking lot was empty. The fog had thickened, swallowing the streetlights, turning everything into a gray blur. I knew then that I was trapped. Behind me, the door to the store clicked softly. It hadn't been locked after all. I had to go back inside. But something inside whispered that going back would only deepen the nightmare. I stepped inside slowly, the automatic doors sliding shut behind me with a hollow finality. The fluorescent lights flickered violently, casting long, jittery shadows that danced across the empty aisles like restless spirits. The store felt different. Warmer somehow, but suffocating, like the walls were closing in. The familiar hum of the refrigeration units was distorted, warped, as if underwater. I moved toward the break room, desperate for some sense of normalcy, some place to catch my breath. But the hallway stretched on endlessly, longer than it should have been, twisting into corners that weren't there before. And then I heard it. Soft, whispering voices, just beyond the edge of hearing. They seemed to seep from the walls themselves, half-remembered warnings and broken pleas. I pressed my back against a cold metal shelf and forced myself to listen. The night takes those who wander. The pump feeds on fear. You must stay until dawn. A sudden chill snaked up my spine as a shadow flickered at the edge of the aisle, too quick to see, but unmistakably there. I wasn't alone. My heart hammered in my chest as the whispering voices faded, replaced by a heavy, suffocating silence. The store seemed to breathe around me, every creak and groan a sinister reminder that I was trapped inside a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I forced myself to move forward, step by slow step, through the endless maze of aisles that twisted and shifted like a living labyrinth. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed erratically, casting jagged shadows that clawed at the edges of my vision. Suddenly, the intercom crackled to life, but instead of the usual announcements, a voice, deep, distorted, and filled with an otherworldly menace, echoed through the store. You cannot escape the night. The pump knows your fear. Feed it, or it feeds on you. A cold sweat broke out across my skin. I dropped to my knees, clutching my head, trying to silence the rising panic. Then, from the darkness at the end of the aisle, a pair of glowing red eyes blinked open, locking onto me. I realized then that this night shift was no ordinary shift. It was a reckoning. The red eyes burned through the darkness, unblinking and filled with a hunger that made my skin crawl. I scrambled backward, heart pounding, desperate to put distance between me and whatever was lurking in the shadows. But the aisles twisted again, rearranging themselves like some cruel puzzle. No matter which way I turned, the glowing eyes followed, always just out of reach, yet impossible to ignore. Suddenly, a cold hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around, but there was no one there, only an empty, silent aisle stretching out before me. A whispered voice hissed in my ear, cold and raspy. "You belong to the pump now." I dropped to the floor, trembling, tears streaming down my face. The walls seemed to close in, the fluorescent lights dimming until the only illumination was the eerie glow from the pump, somewhere far away, calling me back. I knew there was only one choice left. I had to face it. With trembling hands, I forced myself to stand, every muscle screaming in protest. The oppressive air weighed down on me, thick with dread and the scent of something metallic, like blood, or rust. The glowing red eyes seemed to fade into the darkness as I made my way toward the store's exit, but the corridor stretched endlessly, the walls closing in tighter with every step. Ahead, the faint, mechanical hum of the pump echoed through the building, a cruel reminder of the price I was meant to pay. When I finally reached the front doors, they didn't slide open. Instead, the glass cracked in a spiderweb pattern, and behind it, the fog had seeped inside, swirling around my feet like icy fingers. And there, standing just beyond the glass, was the figure, tall, thin, eyes glowing red. It smiled. A smile too wide, too sharp to be human. I realized then, the pump wasn't just a machine. It was a gateway. And crossing it would mean losing myself forever. The figure's smile stretched wider, its red eyes burning with a hunger that pierced through me. The fog curled inward like living smoke, tendrils reaching toward the cracked glass, threatening to spill into the store. I backed away, heart pounding, but the door didn't budge. It was as if some invisible force held me inside, trapped in this nightmare with no escape. Then the pump's mechanical roar surged again, shaking the ground beneath my feet. The lights overhead flickered violently, plunging the store into near darkness. In the dim glow, the shadowed figure began to move, gliding effortlessly toward the door, each step silent but heavy with menace. I fumbled for the emergency exit keycard clipped to my belt, hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. With a trembling swipe, the door unlocked with a sharp beep. I shoved it open and sprinted through the fog, the chill biting at my skin like icy knives. Behind me, the figure stopped at the threshold, its smile fading into a silent snarl. As I burst into the cold night, the pump's hum faded into silence. For now. The night air hit me like a shock, cold and real, so real it felt like a lifeline. I didn't stop running, the fog swirling around my legs as I tore across the empty parking lot. Behind me, the Walmart loomed like a dark, silent beast, its flickering lights swallowed by the night. The pump sat idle now, its screen dark and lifeless, but I could still feel its presence, an electric pulse in the air, a cold whisper in my bones. I glanced back once. The figure stood by the pump, unmoving, its red eyes dimming into nothingness. But I knew it wasn't gone. Not truly. The night had claimed me in some way, marking me with something I couldn't see but would never forget. I stumbled into my car, locking the doors and starting the engine. The radio crackled to life, static, then a voice whispered, "You can't leave. The pump waits." I slammed my fist on the steering wheel. This nightmare was far from over. I sat frozen behind the wheel, the radio's whisper slicing through the silence like a knife. "You can't leave. The pump waits." The words echoed inside my skull, a haunting chant I couldn't escape. The engine sputtered, then died. I pounded the dashboard, panic clawing at my throat. Suddenly, the headlights flickered, and through the fog, the pump's glowing screen came alive again, bright and impossible. A voice, not from the radio but inside my head, hissed. "Welcome back. The night is endless." The car shook violently, as if gripped by invisible hands. I slammed my eyes shut, praying for dawn, for escape, for sanity. When I opened them, I was back inside the store. The aisle stretched infinitely in every direction. And the pump was there, waiting. Because the night shift never ends, days passed, or maybe weeks. Time blurred. I was back home, or at least I thought I was. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the pump's glow, heard its mechanical hum in the silence. No one believed me. The manager said I'd disappeared for hours on the clock, and now I was just exhausted from overwork. But deep inside, I knew the truth. The pump wasn't just a machine. It was a curse, a gateway that tethered me to something beyond this world. And every night, no matter where I was, the hum whispered. "You belong to the night shift now." The nightmare never really ended.